Alrighty then, here we go again, folks. This is me talking to you about this. So we're going to try this. I want you to try this for one day. We're talking about habits that you won't regret, habits of the wealthy people. This is timeless, right? We're talking about habits here. So, let's see. Habits are a big, big part of who we are, okay? What we do habitually makes up much of what we do entirely. In fact, it's estimated that somewhere between 70, at a minimum, 70% of our waking behavior, some say it could be as much as 90% of our waking behavior is made up of habitual behaviors. Maybe you changed your shirt, but that's a habit to not wear the same shirt that you did yesterday, or same pants or same underpants, right? You always buy the same things for your shower. Maybe you always smell a certain way for your scent that you put on. Your deodorant, you use the same thing. Your antiperspirant uses the same thing, right? These are habits. People are highly variable, and if you cannot form one habit easily, it does not mean that you cannot form other habits easily. Look at all your bad habits. They were formed easily without you even thinking about them really to fit in or something of that nature. You did it, and now it's a habit. And maybe you want to kick that habit. Maybe you're not even thinking about that habit. It takes 21 days usually to form a habit. Sometimes it takes less if the habit is not large. Sometimes it takes more if the habit is really big, right? So if you said, well, I'm going to start running every day. Great. If you go and you start running 5 miles from the giddy up, then the problem is going to be you're going to burn out. Right? It's going to take longer to build that habit. But if you start the habit and you do a half a mile or whatever, run to the end of the block or the end down to the stop sign or to the stoplight, turn around and come back, right? Then later on, maybe 15 days from then, after you've worked up some sort of repetition, maybe you can go a little bit further. Maybe it makes you feel a little bit better on the inside. Because we're talking about your feelings, because we're talking about happiness here. So many people say 18 days, 21 days, 30 days. Some people say 90 days. So does it depend on the habit, or does it depend on the person that's trying to instill that habit? Or are we trying to replace a habit, right? Change a bad habit to a good habit, from eating Cheetos to going to the gym. There's a study published in 2010 by author Lay, L-L-Y. This study found that for the same habit to be formed, it can take anywhere from 18 days to as many as 254 days for different individuals to form that particular habit. Some people are just not geared, however you want to call it, geared physically or mentally, to take on that challenge, to maybe go climb Mount Everest. Maybe somebody that's already a mountain climber is ready to go, but as somebody that's sitting on the couch eating Cheetos, probably not in the best shape to go and climb Mount Everest, or go even climb a hill or a mountain, right? So what I'd like to do is to take the scientific literature of how the nervous system learns and engages in its neuroplasticity. And we're going to apply that to habit formation and habit maintenance, and if so desired, how to break the particular habits. I'd like to give you a particular tool that's gleaned from the research of psychology literature. With each repetition of a habit, small changes occur in the cognitive and neural mechanisms associated with procedural memory. So we're going to talk just a little bit for what procedural memory actually is. So in the neuroscience of memory, we distinguish between what's called episodic memory and procedural memory. Episodic memory is a recall of a particular set of events that happened, whereas procedural memory is holding in mind the specific sequence of things that need to happen in order for a particular outcome to occur. So think of it like a recipe protocol, right? A protocol. For the sake of exercise, like sets and reps, or a particular course that you're going to run or cycle or swim, and how you're going to perform that, which arm you're going to move when, right? It's very clear that for anyone trying to adopt a new habit, getting into the mindset of procedural memory is paramount for overcoming that barrier that what we call the limbic friction. And how do we do that? Overcome this limbic friction, or it's basically just friction. Why you don't want to do it is why your ego is telling you that it's a bad idea, or maybe we can push that to the right a little bit. Just, we're going to procrastinate that stuff right there because that's just, work. It's work on yourself, and we label that work in relation to the work that we do, which we do not like, but we work in order to get money to put in our pocket so we can do the things that we actually want to do. So a simple visualization exercise, it does not have to be done with your eyes closed. You don't have to bend yourself into a pretzel, right? Oftentimes we hear visualization exercises. You think about sitting in a lotus position, looking like a pretzel with your eyes closed. Everything has to be quiet, right? You're trying really, really hard to visualize something. It doesn't need to be something like that. It can simply be, if you're deciding to adopt a new habit, to just think about the very specific sequence of steps that's required to execute that habit. So we're going to use a trivial example here. It could be applied to anything here. Let's say I want to get into the habit of making myself or someone else in my house a cup of espresso every morning. Okay, I would actually think through each of those steps. So do I have the equipment? What equipment do I want to use? What is the best espresso that I can make with the budget that I do have? So I'm going to walk into the kitchen and turn on the espresso machine. Make sure there's water in there or whatever else I need. Maybe I'm going to have some sort of latte. Maybe I'm going to have some milk, a particular type of milk. Is it going to be, what type of milk am I going to prepare for my household? What kind of coffee beans do I have? Am I going to grind them now, or am I going to have ground coffee ready to go? So we're going to turn on the kitchen espresso machine. We're going to walk through each of those steps from start to finish, right? And it turns out just that simple mental exercise done one time can shift people towards a much higher likelihood of performing that habit regularly. Not just the first time, right? But as they continue out into the days and weeks that follow. So it's quite remarkable to me, and the literature is really robust on this issue. You just have to visualize yourself doing it once, because the human mind cannot distinguish between your imagination and your vision and reality. It cannot make that distinction. Okay? So now we're going to discuss a second and what is perhaps the most powerful tool for being able to acquire and stick to the new habit. The tool that I'm referring to is something called task bracketing. So the neural circuits associated with task bracketing are basically the neural circuits that are going to allow you to learn any new type of habit or break any habit that you'd like to break. So we have in our brain a set of neural circuits, right, that fall under the umbrella term of the basal ganglia, however you want to pronounce basal, right? So it falls under the umbrella term of this structure, okay? The basal ganglia are involved in action execution. Now I want to emphasize that. Action execution, not sitting on your couch eating Cheetos, right? Picking the Cheetos out of this in between the cushions and chewing on them from 2 weeks ago. It's not about that. What we want to do is take action. And I did mention that the brain cannot, or yourself cannot distinguish the difference between your imagination or your visualizing and your reality. But that does not mean that you sit on the couch eating Cheetos. You need to see physically in the mirror that you're actually getting better. You're getting more fit, right? You have to see yourself as the person that you want to be. Most of the time when we're trying to better ourselves, it starts with the physical stuff, going to the gym. Maybe you need to pick up a book or look on the internet for exercises that you don't need a gym for. So there's no excuse. Well, I can't afford to go to the gym. I don't have a car to get to the gym. I don't have the running shoes. I don't have the weights. There are plenty of things out in nature that will help you. You can pick up a piece of wood. You can pick up a piece of metal. You can pick up something that's a bit heavy but not too heavy, right? You don't need necessarily a set of barbells or dumbbells, right? You can start with body weight exercises. You can search YouTube. I'm sure they have a plethora of those types of things that you can start start execution of your workout routines. You can, if you have a doctor that you see regularly, maybe you need to visit them or call them on the phone or find something on YouTube that if you're 200 pounds or, maybe you're 50 pounds overweight and you're a certain age, maybe you need to do these steps first. You just don't go into the gym and start lifting like Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? You're not an Olympic athlete. You need to work up to those things. How much weight do you want to lose, right? Because as I mentioned in another video on the 8 steps of how to unscrew your life, right? It starts in the brain. What do you want to do? How do you want to present yourself to the world? Do you want to get rid of that weight? Right? What does it mean to you? What is the end goal? Who do you want to be at the end of your weight loss? How do you want to look? Because it's about a feeling that you're going to get. It's about the energy that you're going to get. So, back to the basal ganglia and action execution. So we have to do certain things, and action suppression is not doing certain things, right? In the experimental realm, these are referred to as go, meaning to do, or no-go, meaning to sit on your ass and eat Cheetos all day. Some of us fall more into the category of what we find it very easy to do certain things. We'll do those things, but harder to do harder to not do other things. Okay? Some people had a lot of no-go type circus, and I think that that's what society is being programmed today for. No-go, there's no reason to do any of that stuff because it just, the economy's in the crapper and it's just too expensive, and I should spend my money on other things like a $70 video game so I don't have to go outside. So it's actually saving me money. It's saving me heartache. It's saving me my social skill development. because I'm not actually talking to an actual human. I can say whatever I want to say on the PlayStation because I have a gamer tag, and I could change that anytime I want to. So if I get kicked off for saying something inappropriate, I just create another gamer tag. Yeah, baby. So my social skills don't have to be developed, right? So their behavioral skills for the no-go are very, very robust, and they have a lot of behavioral constraint. They have a harder time getting into action. They're very difficult to get them out of the house, off the couch, right? They have no motivation. They would rather keep that balance for the dopamine at that particular level rather than try to go out and gain pleasure, because all they see when they walk out that door is pain, because that's the way we're programmed. We're always focused on eliminating the pain, and in doing so, we're not pursuing the pleasure of life. If you have a perfect balance of go and no-go, I've never met a person like that, right? But task bracketing involves a particular set of neural circuits within the basal ganglia. We have these particular circuits in our brain that are devoted to framing the events that happened just before and as we initiate a habit, and just after we terminate a habit. So in other words, it acts as sort of a marker for the habit execution, but not the execution of the habit itself. It's very important, right? This is quite important, because task bracketing is what underlies whether or not a habit will be context dependent or not, whether or not it will be strong and likely to occur even if we did not get a good night's sleep the night before, even if we're feeling distracted, even if we're not feeling like doing something emotionally, right? Or if we are completely overwhelmed by other events. If the neural circuits for task bracketing are deeply embedded within us, meaning they're very robust around a particular habit, then it shall be likely that we're going to go out for that zone 2 cardio no matter what, right? We're going to brush our teeth no matter what. In fact, brushing teeth is a pretty good example, actually. Most people, even if you have a terrible night's sleep, even if your life is going wrong, right? Chances are, unless you're very depressed, if you're going to leave the work, or even if you're not, right, that you're going to still carry out this habit and of brushing your teeth in the morning. Actually, you'd kind of hope so, that you do it a couple times a day. But, you're probably less likely to perform particular habits that are not necessarily what you think are actually necessary. But if you think about it, right, brushing your teeth, exercise, eating particular foods, maybe engaging in a social behavior in particular ways, you are the one that places any kind of value assessment on which ones are essential and which ones are negotiable and which ones are, I'm too depressed to do that. You are the one that makes that decision. So task bracketing sets a neural imprint, okay, a kind of a fingerprint into your brain about this thing has to happen at this particular time of the day, right? So much so that it's actually reflexive. While it is important to think about the sequence of events that will be required in order to engage in that behavior, the procedural memory, the visualization exercises we talked about before, that we help that there is a way also that you can orient your nervous system towards this task bracketing process, so that your nervous system is shifted or oriented toward the execution of a given habit. So this is sort of like warming up your body to exercise. When the dorsolateral sternum is engaged, your body and your brain are primed to execute a habit. And then you get to consciously insert which habit you want to perform. If you're considering adopting a new habit, or if you're trying to break a habit, it's very useful to think not just about the procedural aspects, right? But also think about the events that precede and follow that particular habit. And you want to focus also on the emotions that you're going to get from that habit. Because we always do things as mankind, we always do things that make us feel better. If we do things and we feel bad, then we probably don't really establish those as a habit. Even the bad habits that we have for drinking and smoking, it feels a certain way while we're doing it. But we know at every level, when we're done, we're not going to feel better, right? We're actually going to feel worse. Maybe there's a hangover involved, right? Maybe there's a crash. There's some sort of crash that happens, okay? And that's the balance coming back in for the pain portion of what you just tried to use for pleasure. So when we're trying to do alcohol or maybe smoke some marijuana or do some other type of drug, you're checking out of reality. But when reality comes back and when you check back into reality, those same problems that you decided to check out for are still there, right? So yes, you got a temporary reprieve from reality, but there's other ways to take care of those problems so they're not there. You don't need those medications. You don't need those drugs to temporarily check out of reality. There are ways to conquer. There are ways to be okay with those things that have caused you pain, because they're the lessons that you have survived, right? There are lessons. What can you learn from that particular pain that you've experienced? So the execution, or at least the effort to execute that particular habit, you're casting a kind of a spotlight around a bin of time or a set of events which the dopamine can be associated with. What does it look like what does this look like in the practical sense? So let's use a very simple, concrete example. So this example can carry over to anything, right? This is like a metaphor, so apply this to everything. So let's say I was somebody who has a hard time getting in that 30 to 60 minutes of zone 2 cardiovascular exercise in the mid part of the morning, okay? What I should do is positively anticipate the onset and the offset of that session. So thinking about leaning into the effort, right? Going out and doing that zone 2 cardio session, and I should think about how I'm going to feel after the fact. Not just thinking about how great I'm going to feel after, but also thinking about how hard it's going to be at the beginning of that session. And then trying to reward myself subjectively for the entire experience. So in other words, start rewarding task bracketing in addition to rewarding the execution of the habit itself. So I'll get into this tool of breaking that, of breaking the habits. capture the sequence of events, not that led to the bad habit execution, but actually to take advantage of the fact that the neurons that were responsible for generating that particular bad habit were active a moment ago. And to actually engage in a replacement behavior immediately after that. Now, this is really, really interesting, and I think it's very powerful. I would have thought that you have to engage in a replacement behavior that truly replaces the bad habit behavior. Okay? That you'd have to be able to identify your state of mind that would, or the sequence of events leading into that bad habit, but rather the stage or the period immediately after the bad habit execution is a unique opportunity to insert a different type of what we would call an adaptive behavior. But that could be any behavior that's not in line with the bad behavior. So let's give an example. So let's say you find yourself, you're trying to do focused work, okay? You pick up your phone, and you're disappointing yourself for picking up your phone, right? You could, of course, just put it down or not picked it up at all, but you can always set it down then and re-engage into the working behavior. But if you were good at that, then you probably wouldn't have done it in the first place, right? And so what turns out to be very effective is to go engage in some other positive habit behavior, right? This has two major effects. The first one is you start to link in time the execution of a bad behavior to this other good behavior, right? And in doing so, you start to recruit other neural circuits, other neurons that can start to somewhat dismantle the sequence of firing associated with that particular bad behavior. So in other words, you start to create a kind of a double habit that starts with a bad habit and then ends with a good habit. And that seems to create enough of a temporal mismatch so that then recognizing when you're heading towards a bad habit becomes more apparent to you. So again, it's going to be, I want to make this quite concrete because it's basically switching the neurons. Okay, so let's say the behavior is reflexively picking up one's phone. You do that, you think, I did it again, right? So here's what I'm going to do now. Set it down and then engage in some other positive behavior, right, that you have deemed positive. So you're basically, I just did this bad behavior. Let me set it down. I'm not going to beat myself up about it. Now I'm going to go do this positive behavior because I'm going to switch the dopamine. I'm going to switch the feeling of doing something really good instead of something that I don't want to do anymore. Right? So it's quite hard for me to give an example of this because it's your behavior. It's your habit. I don't know what your habit is that you want to kick. Right? So it's difficult for me to give an example of that. So this would not necessarily make sense to everybody, but you need to apply it to your situation, okay? Perhaps maybe you're working on hydration, okay? Maybe you'll have a glass of water. Maybe you're trying to do some sort of breath work like Wim Hof method or something of that nature, right? Maybe you're doing some pranayama after a different fashion from a different source, right? Maybe you're trying to enhance your language speaking skills, right? So you go and you spend 5 minutes doing a particular type of language learning. You literally exit whatever you're doing and perform that other new positive habit in the immediate period right after that, even if it's for 5 minutes, right? A very short period of time. So these are the things that you're going to have to do to move from zero habit to gaining a habit or from a negative habit to a positive habit, okay? So just be aware that these are the methodologies that can be used and should be used by you. These are the ideas that you need to get into those types of habits. All right.